My next guest is among a group of voting rights advocates fighting back after Supreme Court decisions that allowed Republicans in the South to move forward with new congressional maps that dilute the power of minority voters. Former Massachusetts Congressman Joe Kennedy III is the founder of Groundwork Project. Thanks so much for being with us. Congressman, you just convened with leaders from Alabama, Tennessee, Florida, Louisiana, Mississippi. How do you come up with a unified strategy for all of these places together?
Well, Ariel, thanks so much for having us and for obviously paying attention to such a critical moment at a critical time. So, well, first off, I think you've got to recognize that you don't redistrict mid-cycle if you are confident that the case you're making for the American people is good enough to win. And what we're seeing from Republicans is an acknowledgement that, one, they can't, so they're trying to tilt the scales of power and disenfranchise millions of people across the country. And that's not just a consequence of what happens in the representation of Washington. When you do this, there's about 190 different state and local elective seats that are now at risk of changing representation as well. That's seats on school boards, that's seats about hospital funding, that's seats about local infrastructure. The lived experience that is characterized as Americans' daily lives is about to get tilted in favor of some instead of others. And that's really what's at stake here. And so what's the response from people in these communities is you fight back, and you fight back by linking arms across these communities, community by community, building the coalition that you need to actually demand a free and fair election and fair governance.
One of the fears is that people will be so frustrated about what they're seeing and frankly confused over where to vote, how to vote, that they may just sit at home. Your group says that the fight isn't over just one candidate or one election. It's about democracy itself. How do you activate voters who feel discouraged by what they've seen out of the Supreme Court when it comes to Louisiana and Alabama?
So, look, I think many of us across the country feel discouraged, angry, disheartened, demoralized, but not defeated. And so what you're actually seeing from the conditions on the ground in some of these states, Alabama and Mississippi in particular, and these elections, primary elections were before the Kelly decision, but you had nearly 365,000 Democratic primary voters in Alabama, which is the most that had turned out in nearly 20 years. You had 150,000 primary voters in Mississippi. That was nearly double what it was just 2 years ago. So what are you seeing on the ground? You're seeing an understanding and a recognition from communities across the South, across the country, that what's coming from this White House is an effort to rig the game against their lives and daily experience, and they are fighting back. And what comes next then is, again, linking arm in arm, demanding that a government be as good as its people, as generous as its people, and continue to band together to actually send a message on Election Day in November to send the right people to Washington to undo this harm and to make our country better and fairer.
And you speak about what comes next. This isn't just about the midterms. It's also about what could happen in 2028. What are your biggest fears, your concerns, and what needs to be done between now and then? It feels like it's a long way off, but it's not.
It's not a long way off. And, I keep saying biggest fears, and then, this administration continues to one up about what those fears might be. That being said, what I think the solace I take from the organizations and such that we support across the country, it is that people are willing to fight for their neighbor. They're willing to fight for their community. And Donald Trump can do all of the horrific things and be focused on all the wrong things, like how long the reflecting pool is in Washington, D.C. in the midst of an affordability crisis. He can't stop you from caring about a neighbor. He can't stop you from reaching out to somebody in need and trying to find a way to build community. He can't stop communities from coming together to fight for a better country, a fairer country that recognizes everybody. And that's the message from these activists. It's not the partisan red versus blue. It's we are Americans. We deserve to be seen. We deserve to be heard. We deserve to have a voice in our government. And we are going to demand that we make it so. And we know it works because our forefathers, our forebearers did this. Trying to act like this is something new in Alabama or in Mississippi, like this has been the cradle of that opposition for and of the authoritarianism from government against its people, not just for 250 years, but for a long time before that. And yet still, these are some of the most optimistic and talented and energized organizers anywhere in the country, because they know we can make lives better, and they've seen it firsthand, and they've delivered it. And so my response is, let's go bet on them, and let's make this country as good as its people.
Former Congressman Joe Kennedy III, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us today.
Thank you.